Hello all. Welcome to the session of organizational objective seconds. This is the second part where we would be discussing the advantages or disadvantages as well as the processes like management by objectives and top-down approach. Advantages of objectives. The first is proper planning. So the main advantage of planning is ensuring things to go proper way. The systematic setting encourages proper planning. The basic ideas and fundamental theories of planning are to achieve the basic objective in the organization. These ideas are to make people work according to given objectives. Some objectives are or they may aim at individuals, so having an individual focus. So objectives, they ensure that there is proper planning and vice versa. Proper planning means the concrete objectives. The motivation part, so employees feel very motivated if they know they have concrete objectives to pursue. So these objectives, they provide motivation to the people in the organization. All the individuals are directly motivated by others and their objectives from the high level to low level. What does that mean? It means that if, let us say, for example, your colleagues or peers have got certain objectives, so you will see their objectives and you will feel, oh, even I can do that work, and you would also be motivated to take some more challenging tasks as your objectives. And also the employees feels that after completing their duties, they will be rewarded suitably towards their job performance and also would be recognized by others. So once that challenging objective you have undertaken and you were able to accomplish all the results, then you would be recognized and you would be suitably awarded, rewarded for it. So that actually motivates the employees. Hence the employees get motivated to work. The third is direct coordination. So the objectives, the clearer the objectives would be, the better would be the coordination. So the effort of voluntary coordination may put into a detailed plan of an organization. In the workforce, the freedom has been given to employee that they can work in place of others towards voluntary coordination. So people might be, coordinating with each other, volunteering each other's work in order to achieve the overall objective of the organization. The control process. So it is very easy to control things when you have laid out individual objectives to the people. Then you can go ahead and see, okay, now have you how much have you accomplished out of your objective. So let's say if it was making 50 calls, so how many have you done? So are you able to accomplish your objective or not? So control of human efforts is standard and can be achieved with better planning of objectives. Controlling process and maintaining the standard performances so as to obtain the organizational goal effectively. So without such standards, so objectives, what are they doing? They are serving as standards. Meaningful control cannot exist. Standard for control is mainly helpful in finance and promotional strategies. Next is integration. What does integration means? So it is it is a link between organization and groups. So the different departments like production, marketing, finance, account, auditing and personnel brings them all enterprise together in the organization with the help of objectives. So you have some common objectives and then you have some individual objectives, and these are the objectives which are actually integrating the entire organization. It is sort of the thread that is keeping the entire garland together. Decentralization, so pearls of a string, you can say. So the thread of the string, not the pearls are these other departments and all. Then decentralization of authority. So With the objectives, if you have assigned individual objectives, then in a sense you have decentralized it, and you know the benefits of decentralization, that the pressure on the top management decreases leaps and bounds. So decentralization can happen with clear cut individual objectives, and they also facilitate the authorities. The managers can assign the duties to be performed by the subordinates at the lower level. So all these are the advantages of objectives. Now we come to disadvantages of objectives. So whenever objectives are set, you cannot make sure that everybody gets what he wants. So there may be people who would be doing certain jobs which they do not like, or it's also something like grass is always greener on the other side. So if your colleague or subordinate or a competitor, I mean rival in your own workplace, he has got something, then you'll think, oh, his work is better than mine. So whenever the objectives are so clear and you've laid them down, that may displease certain people. Then second is unnecessary competition. So it comes from the first point only, that when once people see that okay, others have objectives, so rather than only getting motivated, they can also feel pressurized and in competition. Oh, this person is doing this much, I am not able to do it. Maybe your work is a little different and it requires more of your time, and that is why you're not able to pursue it. So it just depends that whether competition is healthy or not. So healthy competition is a welcome, but not the mutually destructive competition in the organizations. Sometimes there is a tendency to exploit each other between the workers in order to achieve objectives. So they can go to certain extent that they would start exploiting each other, and cutthroat competition, that oh, I will go first to the manager showing my work. So in that case, he's taking help from everybody, and stepping on somebody's head to do that. So that is not a very welcome thing in the organization. This problem will lead due to results in frustration among the workers. The next is objectives may sometimes affect the individuals directly, like cut down labor costs. So an objective can be that okay, this time we'll cut down labor costs. So who is getting directly affected by it? There would be labor that would be retrenched. So hence it can actually lead to the displeasure, and it can affect the labor and management relationships also. So these were the disadvantages of objectives. Now we come to the proper setting of enterprise objectives. What do you mean by proper setting? That when a firm is going to set the objectives, what all things it should keep in mind. The very first thing is the objective must be performed or defined in exact terms, and hence it should avoid ambiguity. What does that mean? That the objective has to be precise. For example, let us say that the goal was that we'll increase 20% profit in this product. Now for that, the concrete objective can be that we would be opening 30 new stores, or we would be introducing one new product. So these are the specific objectives. Then next is the statement must be qualitative, so that the objectives must be essential. Only then accomplishment of measures will become easy. So having said that it should be quantifiable, it has to be qualitative as well. In our previous example, like 20 stores, so 20 stores maybe in 5 in south, 5 in west, 5 in east. So now the quality and how big the stores would be, what is the product we would be selling. So there is a mix of qualitative and quantitative objectives. Objectives must be truthful and procedural. So it has to cover the procedure of it, and they have to be truthful. Now you do not have that many resources to open 20 stores, but you've just written it कि okay, we'll find out if some investor will be there and then we would be doing it. No, it cannot go that way. They have to be realistic, truthful, and procedural, so as to maintain the availability of resources, extent of competition, and government regulation. So if something government will not permit and you have given it in your objective, it is not going to get fulfilled. Then certain policies, procedures, programs, and strategies must be supported the objective so as to depend on its existence. That means the objective, it has to be backed up by certain policies and procedures and programs and strategies. So you would be all these objectives, like if you've said that 5 you will be opening in south, so the strategies, what would be the strategy, where would you be opening it first, whether you would be testing the waters, what procedures will you follow, everything has to be in line. So just saying in vaguely that I would be doing it would not count. You have to check your resources, you have to see that how you would be putting those resources to use, and then you would be formulating your objective. It is also necessary to make the objectives very soft, that means flexible. So objective has to be flexible. Hard objectives may cause the work very heavy and tough. So it, one thing is, it cannot be a harsh objective that opening up one store requires 3 months of a manager, and you have told him to open 5 stores in a year. How would he do that? 12 months, and so what actually you are telling that he should work a lot more than what he can, and so it would become very heavy for him. As well as the objectives have to be a little flexible also. You have to consider the kind of environmental changes that can happen, and it should be able to support you in those changes. So this was about what all things you should keep in mind before setting up your enterprise objective. The next is the process of setting objectives, what all you will do. So the very first thing you will do is classifying of objectives into major and derivative goals and long range and short range objectives. So we have already covered what are the different type of objectives we were looking at. So there are primary objectives, secondary objectives, and then there are individual objectives and social objectives. So you would be categorizing them in the major objectives and derivative goals. What are derivatives? That the profit maximization is one objective, and getting 20% increase in sales is the derivative goal, which will lead to the major goal. And then long range and short range objectives. So long range can be earning 20% profit, but what is the short range objective? Short range objective is how you would be getting it within that span of time of 6 months to 1 year. Now the objectives that are set must be reasonable, realistic, and they should have consistencies. Like before, we have already discussed it, that they have to be very, very realistic in nature. In other words, the objectives must be attainable with reasonable ease, and they should be set in realistic environment and not in idealistic terms. So ideally, something like one can work a lot and get the 4-5 stores opened, but realistically it is not possible for him without getting some external help or something. So only when they are reasonably attainable, they can provide incentive and job satisfaction for higher performance. In addition, they must be consistent. So you cannot keep on changing the objectives every now and then, because that would lead to confusions. Most enterprises have multiple goals and objectives at a time covering different areas. As has already been stated, according to Peter F. Drucker, there are 8 areas for which objectives have to be set. The areas consist of market standing, innovation, productivity, physical and financial resources, profitability, manager performance and development, work performance, and attitude and public responsibilities. So these are the 8 areas in which Peter F. Drucker said that you should have your objectives set. Then the next is Adequate thought should be given for balancing the various objectives and for removing their conflicts. So one has to continuously work on removing these conflicts. Short range objectives and minor objectives should not conflict with the long range and major objectives. So these small objectives, achieving them only lead to the long range and major objectives. So you cannot ignore the short range objectives as well. Whereas if it becomes pertinent that there is a short range objective which is contradicting the major objective, then you should actually leave that short range objective. Further, although objectives are more stable than the other plans, the management has to recognize the fact that business is functioning in a dynamic business environment, which necessitates the company to make periodic adjustments of objectives to keep pace with the progress of time and changes in the environment. This also we have already discussed that as the environment is changing, so the organization has to progress with it and incorporate those changes with time to be able to sustain. So there are two approaches of objective settings. The first is traditional approach and management by objectives, and the second top down or bottoms approach. So more or less they are in a way similar, because we have discussed management by objectives in our previous, I think 1.4a. We have already covered management by objectives. You can go back again and look for it. So that is a very good approach of objective setting, which comes here in this unit as well. So what does that say? That actually is like bottoms up approach. We have discussed top down and bottoms up. So what was bottoms up approach? That the individuals will decide about the objectives, and then they'll communicate it to the people above them, and then it would go to the top management. There is just a little difference, that management by objectives would take care of the top management needs, as well as the lower level managers. So it is a comprehensive approach, whereas this traditional approach takes only into account that the top management would be taking all the major decisions and would be making certain objectives to be followed by everybody in the organization. So traditional approach and top down approach are a bit similar, whereas management by objectives incorporates bottoms up and it is more. So traditional approach, in this approach the objectives are set by the people at the top of the organization. This approach is essentially one way and is called an authoritarian approach. This approach is likely to reduce their motivation, sense of commitment and responsibility of the workers. Whereas management by objectives, as we've already done, MBO is a technique and philosophy of management based on converting an organizational objective into personal objectives, on the presumption that establishing personal objectives makes an employee committed, which leads to better performance. So the objective setting in MBO creates an integrated hierarchy of objectives throughout the entire organization. So it is a network of objectives that what I can do, I'll perceive and I'll push it back upwards. So from up they'll push it here, and then there would be a consensus that will happen, and they'll work by management by objectives. Now, what are the factors affecting objective formulation? So the first is size of the organization. Bigger the size, the objective formulation becomes a very complex procedure. And the value system of top management. The objective formulation is affected by the value system of top management, their philosophy, attitudes, aspiration, needs, influence. So if the top management is an autocratic style, then they would go in for the traditional way of setting objectives. If top management is more collaborative style, they would like to adopt MBO, which is a more scientific way of setting objectives. And then uh, you know there are aspirations, what is needed out of your employees. If you are working in an environment where there are majorly unskilled workers, then the top down or traditional approach is the better one. Whereas if you are working, let's say if you are working in a BPO, then maybe top down approach or traditional approach is good. But if you're working with a KPO, that is knowledge process outsourcing, then you would like to maintain the MBO. Then organizational objectives are set by managers. So level of management also makes it, determines that what kind of objectives have to be set. Different levels of managers set different kinds of objectives. So the top management can decide that whether they would be going in for top down or bottoms up approach, but whereas lower level managers cannot individually decide that yes, they want to go in for a collaborative style of objective setting. They can express their willingness, but it is ultimately the decision of top management. So top level managers, they are involved in determining vision, mission, strategy and overall objectives. So generally this is the work, vision and strategies are the work of the top level of management only, and in fact overall objectives as well. So how much they want to get into, or they want to listen to their employees and their needs, is up to them. Then middle level managers, they are involved in setting key result area objectives, and lower level managers, they are involved setting specific operational objectives. So all these three levels are making different type of objectives. So it depends which type, at which level are you talking, and the level of management will decide what kind of objectives would you be setting. It depends upon your designation basically. Culture, organization's culture. So what is a culture? It is a system of shared set of values, beliefs, norms that guide their behavior. Organization culture is indicated by autonomy, mutuality of interest, climate of trust, feeling of belonging, team spirit, collaboration. So objectives are formed according to the organizational culture. Like Hindustan Lever Limited, they have got this culture of integrity, respect and responsibility, right? So in that, when they talk about integrity, they expect that the employees would be working with utmost integrity and values and ethics, and respect, they would respect their profession as well as they would respect other people's ideas and beliefs also. And then responsibility, that they are ready to assume the responsibility. In such an environment, you can have management by objectives type of a strategy for objective setting. Environmental forces, external environmental forces affect objective formulation. They can be political, such as government policies and regulations. Now there are certain political regulations have come, and the laws. So these they can actually affect your objective setting. So maybe the lower level managers may not be able to take rational decision in terms of the policies and or maybe economics or competition, and that top level management has to come in to take certain decisions for the overall benefit of the organization. Social cultural, such as population forces and social cultural values. Now these values can be sent from lower level management to the upper level management. That top level management is sitting in Mumbai, whereas the lower level management is working in Pune, in other deep states of deep towns of Maharashtra. So these cultural values can only be expressed through lower level managers to the upper level management. So their objectives would be set by the bottom down approach. Technological, such as level of technology, speed of technical change. So all these things would also so if the top management, it's a tech savvy organization, it is better that the top level management who is in sync with the latest technology is setting up the objectives and the others are going with that. So it depends upon all these factors, that which kind of approach you would be adopting in your organization for objective setting. Now, key areas as given by Peter F. Drucker, which we just did 2 slides back. So the first is innovation. What is innovation? Why you should be setting your objectives in the area of innovation? Innovation is the hallmark of progress and prosperity through associated with high degree of risk and uncertainty. So innovation has risk and uncertainty as well. So hence objectives become imperative here, that with the help of objectives you can actually foray into an area where you can lead to efficiency in the organization. So there is great need for new and innovative products and services. Even if it is risk in being the first with something new, it has potentials of high rewards. So you would be formulating objectives in the area of innovation. Then management development. The survival of any organization depends on the development of management. Smaller firms are especially vulnerable since the management enterprise often rests with one or few talented managers. So the organizations, whether large or small, must set objectives relating to the quality of management performance and to ensure the development of managers at all levels. Management development is one of the strategic issues of corporate governance also, and development, particularly when strategic business units, that those are SBUs, are formed for various strategic decisions and actions. So you have to make key objectives in the view that the managers are developed, ensuring that the development of managers is taking place at all levels. Worker performance and attitudes. So you cannot ignore the workers and set your objectives. So in every organization, most of the routine tasks are performed by the operative level employees. The operations of many large and small firms are disrupted by strikes. The managers of smaller non-uniform union firms become alarmed when their workers talk of organizing or joining a union. So you have to take care of that, the workers are satisfied or not. Then public and social responsibility. The profit ethic, the idea the business is to maximize profit. One serve the purpose. So, so you have to take care of the social responsibility of the business and you have to create objectives according to that. Today, this ethic cannot be used since there are goals other than profit. An organization must operate at maximum economic efficiency to get rid of evil connotations attached to the word profit. So according to Phillips, business should seek society's good in ways that are also good for business. So you have to find out a way where you are also profitable, because if business is not profitable, then society is not going to gain out of it. So business has to be profitable, but not at the cost of society. They should go hand in hand. Then market standing. A business must set objectives concerning what share of the market it will try to capture. So the objectives have to be clearly set about what kind of market share are you going to eye upon. Productivity. Productivity or efficiency is the ratio of an organization's inputs to outputs. It is concerned with the determination and balancing of inputs of material, labor, equipment, finance, and managerial skills to produce the firm's output. Now, productivity is a very important thing, and if there is lower productivity, then your company cannot go on profitable terms. So, you have to have certain objectives in terms of the productivity. So, for example, when a firm cuts its employees' turnover rate, the cost of hiring and training new employees drops. This results in increased productivity, or when material specifications are changed in association with an improved equipment, the overall productivity may increase. So, there are certain objectives which the enterprise would be laying in order to increase the productivity, and you cannot ignore them. Physical and financial resources. So, resources are limited, and hence you have to have certain objectives to minimize the utilization of efficient utilization of resources by minimizing the costs. So this is the concern with the generation and utilization of financial resources coupled with the organization of physical resources like men, materials and machinery. So the objectives should be established regarding plant and equipment and human resources and supply of raw materials. So all these resources have to be adequately utilized, and for that you have to make objectives. Profitability. Now, profit objectives are important because otherwise you cannot sustain yourself. So, what it should be including the research and development needed for innovation of products because that would lead to profits, the financial strength to update the plant and equipment that again will increase the productivity and hence the profitability, the salaries needed to attract outstanding personnel so that because if you have good people with you, you are set to gain in the long term and hence your profitability will increase. So you have to have certain objectives regarding your profitability. So this was all about the objectives, and thank you so much for listening.